For more great content, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell.
Hello everyone, what is up? It's your girl Yinsu again from Upcomer to bring you guys another episode of Showstopper. This week we have a Masters Berlin post-event special episode. I'm joined by Tyler as always from NA, and I needed to bring someone from EU to be able to bask in our glory, Ryan. So you're here to help me with rubbing it in with Tyler.
I will say, because I was on the show like the week before, big change, Tyler, in regards to like my mood, especially because I think at that point it was what Acend had lost with Vision Strikers, 100 Thieves had beat Gambit, so big turnaround, right?
I predicted Gambit in that episode. I said Gambit was going to win. I predicted them at the end. I said Gambit had the highest potential winning team at the tournament, so I will take that as an NA victory. I will take that as a W in our cap.
Any opportunity.
I feel like it was kind of rigged. I mean, all three NA teams were on one side of the bracket. It was a qualifier for champions, really. Like, do we really care about qualifier? It was a seeding game. Like,
we care because we have 4 EMEA teams now at champions, and you've only got 3, so it sucks to be you.
It was. We'll get into it, but it was a great tournament. It blew away Reykjavik in almost every kind of category, from reduction to game quality to excitement. It was a brilliant put on tournament, and I can't wait to talk about it. Even though, again, NA did lose, but again, I think coming out of this tournament, I think the prevailing narrative, outside of how amazing Gambit is, how stellar and just phenomenal Nats is that NA and EMEA are just so far ahead of every other region. It's not even close. Like there's NA, EMEA, Vision Strikers, and then there's just a wasteland of just a giant gap.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm going to wait until we get into the meat of it for me to disagree with you. But let's start with Roast My Tier List. Now, Tyler, as you would remember, we did a tier list before the tournament started with SuperMassive Blaze's Brave. I like to show Ryan what we made before the tournament started and have him roast those, because I think some of it is going to be horrendously wrong. Okay, right. Let's start with Tyler's tier list here. So this is what he went, Ryan, with pre-tournament. Now, what do you make of this?
I think
the disrespect. No, the disrespect for on G2 is ridiculous.
They leveled up
the disrespect.
They leveled up a ton. keloqz turned into a god. keloqz went
I honestly think it's a disrespect. Like, with that roster, with players like Nuki and Avova and Mixwell already on that roster, they should never be in C. Like, just on the back of those names.
It's not my fault. They got slapped around by dry aim duels by SuperMassive Blaze in qualifiers. They leveled up. keloqz evolved as a player on LAN. He became a LANable. The man
you thought G2 were on the same level as Vivo Key. Like, that's what is mind-blowing to me.
Heat was pretty awesome. I said Heat was going to be pretty awesome. He was pretty awesome.
Anything else?
I think overall, I think going in, I think it's still a pretty fine tier list. Obviously, it's changed now after the tournament. I always thought Gambit was going to be the toughest test for Sentinels. They never really played, which was kind of a misfortune, but Gambit, obviously the best team at the tournament. 100 Thieves, I feel very justified to put them in A. I think their lane experience definitely showed through, especially versus the 2 teams in the A tier with them, Acend and Gambit. I think my Bs were very much of like, I want to see how they have the potential to be A or S, but I need to see more of them. I think Vision Strikers and Team Envy both passed the eye test, and just the results they showed, where SuperMassive Blaze disappointed, and I think they deserve that B or C ranking from how they played. But I do think the most egregious error is G2. I should have put them in B. They were B. They should have been B tier, and I think they went to A during this tournament. So I think that was my biggest error. And then D tier, pretty much just, I guess you could say F4Q and Crew bumped themselves up. Maybe Havon Liberty should be in
Paper Rex. Paper
works too, but like I think like there was a bit of shuffling at the bottom, but I think overall it was a fine tier list going in. It wasn't the most exciting one, but I think G2 is my biggest error.
I was going to say that's the only thing about it, really. It's a very safe tier list for the most part. Yeah. And I don't disagree with the G2 stuff. I think it's still super early days with this roster. Like, we clearly saw potential with this team, but their playoff game was up against Crew. And whilst the win over Sentinels was really good in their group, it ultimately didn't amount to too much difference other than, I guess, the top seed, actually. So thinking about it, I immediately take back that statement of it not mattering, because what would we have seen if Sentinels were the top seed in that group? It would have been Sentinels versus Crew.
Yeah.
Sentinels are likely to win that still. Yeah. Then it would be Sentinels versus Gambit in the semi-final, which could have gone either way. Meanwhile, G2 get thrown up against Envy, and I think that continues the same way, right? So I think that like this G2 team is coming in with a huge amount of momentum into Last Chance Qualifiers. I think there's still favorites like Liquid that could do a lot, but that's a freight train of a team that is really starting to find form right now. I think everything else is fairly standard. I just don't think there's much of a gulf in class between the A and the B teams. I think that's been the most pleasantly surprising thing about the event, is that Vision Strikers stack up incredibly well against like international teams, and Envy have also managed to upgrade not only with Ye, but just the whole team seems to gel really well together. I think the only thing, if I'm being nitpicky, is moving Crew up, because I think they've actually shown that they're a legit team. They aren't just they're the best in LATAM, so they get a free pass, much like you maybe argue for Crazy Raccoon, Havan Liberty, that kind of thing. I think Crew have actually done really well, and I've been really impressed despite them finishing just the top 8 overall.
Yeah, I honestly, I remember getting really angry at Tyler at the time about this G2 pick. No disrespect to Brazil, Vamos Brazil, love you guys. But I do think there isn't the gap between Gambit, Ascend, 100 Thieves and G2 is not the same as the gap between G2 and Vivo Kid. And that's why I was really angry about this, because that's a big gap, in my opinion.
They always have Heat, though. That's the thing. That's the only reason why I put them in C, because they have one of the best players in the tournament. Heat, when he's on, is we saw him display in Berlin in the early rounds against Envy, is that when Heat is on, when he's playing at his peak, he can make some of the best teams in the world sweat. So
yeah, but the rest of the team in comparison to G2 is, I think, disrespectful to G2.
I think they're dual.
I was going to say that's like a high stonks rating of Vivo Kid as well, which I think is a fair hot take to take, is just the Brazil region's going to have some top teams. Vivo Kid is, again, like one of those super teams-ish. Obviously, you're missing players from Sharks, from Team Vikings, from Gamelanders, like MW0. You don't have like a super team of that level like SuperMassive Blaze is for Turkey, but this still is a region that has a huge amount of talent that, if they can put together the right kind of team, could do a lot of damage on an international stage. So I wouldn't say the Vivo Kid or Brazil have been the biggest disappointment for Berlin in particular. I think it was just people were really excited to see what this team could do in this region, and it didn't live up to expectations.
Hey, I'll be the bad guy here. I think Brazil is the biggest disappointment of Berlin. I think not Vivo Kid in particular, but I thought Havan Liberty were they were the worst team in the entire event. They went 0-4. They got 2-0 by Crazy Raccoon, which was the consensus worst team going in. Yeah. They have as many seeds, you know, if they win the South America qualifier versus the LATAM teams, which I don't think is, you know, I think a few months ago you would have said that's just a shoe-in for Brazil. I don't think that's a shoe-in anymore, even though Crew is by far the best LATAM team. Brazil has as many seeds as EMEA and NA, which is ludicrous. If you look at the records between the two regions, I think NA and EMEA both around have like a 65-70% win rate at Masters so far through the first two tournaments. I think Brazil is sitting around 30%. They've won 2 matches from the 4 teams they sent. They've won 2 matches, 2 best of 3s in Reykjavik and Berlin. We had Vivo Kid. They beat Zeta Division and then lost to Crew. And we had Team Vikings beat X10 at Reykjavik. Those are the only 2 wins Brazil's has, is versus a Southeast Asian team and a Japanese team. And they've been kind of outclassed by pretty much any NA or EMEA team, and Crew has been better in the South America region. So I'm looking at Brazil. Like, Brazil is going to send most likely they're sending 2 confirmed teams, Vivo Key and Vikings, and they might send a third if they can win the Last Chance Qualifier. I think Brazil is in a very precarious position, and if they go to Champions and they have the same results they had at Reykjavik and Berlin, they need to get seeds taken away, because you can't be considered a major region with your seeding like NA and EMEA if you have a 30% win rate compared to 65-70% like NA and EMEA. It doesn't work.
Give Latam 2 spots. Woo.
Yes, give Latam 2 spots.
Yeah, I'm with that.
See Australs on the international stage.
Yeah, give us Australs.
It's going to be a really interesting Last Chance qualifier, though, because it's 4 teams from Brazil, 4 teams from Latam.
We will talk about it. We will talk about it. Spoilers, Ryan. Spoilers.
Okay.
We're going to get onto that. We're going to get onto that.
That's going to be a real good look. I think, Southeast Asia, I think would have been as disappointing. I think the very least from the SEA region, we get some brilliant players. I think Benkai really showed up on the international stage in a way that people really wanted to see. Patspan did it with X10. Obviously, Forsaken did it with PaperX as well.
My boy Mind Freak, so underrated. I absolutely loved Mind Freak. Yeah.
I think the big thing for Brazil is the talent is there. And I think the big thing when you're looking back at the tier list is like G2 versus Vivo Keyed, compare how much both these orgs spent on their teams. I imagine there is a stark difference in how much they cost. And I think that there's an opportunity for a big Brazilian org like Furia to actually, in 2022, buy up these big class players, Sassy, MW0, legit put together the best team in Brazil, because at the very least, if you still have 2 spots, that's an in to every international event. You're going to be on the main stage there. If you actually put the money into putting together a solid squad, you can breeze through qualification, and you could actually do well on an international stage with one of the most brilliant, I suppose, regions when it comes to fanfare, right? Like, there is such a big opening for Brazil orgs there that I'm actually surprised the teams haven't put more money and invested more into being that in the region, because SuperMassive Blaze, it was the immediate, we put together this team, it's now in an international event, and fortunately it didn't do as well, but people were really wanting that to do well for its region. I think Brazil's the same. There is a huge opening for an org to actually be the next big thing.
Just poach some Counter-Strike players. There's Brazilian Counter-Strike players.
Cold Zero.
So many. Oh my God, if Cold Zero moves, Colin's going to lose his mind. But moving on to my list. This is my tier list. So this is my pre-event tier list. As you can see, Ryan, I wasn't trolling. So I respected Gambit, knew what they could do, respected G2, maybe I disrespected Envy. I definitely give you that.
You disrespected El Diablo.
I also respected Crew. I had hopes.
And have on Liberty. I think for all the points you get for believing in Crew, you lose as many points for believing in Hop on Liberty.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hop on Liberty were dreadful.
Yo, you disrespected Gambit. I was like, no, Gambit is S tier. Gambit is 100% S tier. I was so sure about this, and I'm so glad I went through with it. But yeah, Ryan, what do you think of mine?
I prefer yours to Fionn's, that's for sure. I feel just naturally, I think it's more the recency bias and hindsight that's working out nicely. There are a couple of Havan and Vivo Keyed being up there the same, but Crew doing well. I think they did well in their group. I feel like this is you looking at the groups and trying to work out roughly how things could work. Because, if you have a group with Crew, Envy, Havan, Liberty, no, it was Vivo Keyed and Zeta Division in Group B. I think it's fair to say, all right, Envy and Crew are looking the best teams there. We'll bump them up a little bit. Whereas if they were put in a group with Acend or SuperMassive Blaze, you might have put Crew lower. That's how I feel that you've spun it.
No, I genuinely just looked at these teams as the way I saw them. I mean, I was a little bit blinded too, because I just watched so many of these games, as you did as well, I'm sure, Ryan, just regional games. I was just churning them out day after day. It all just got blended into one. And for me, I actually was kind of impressed by Crew, especially watching their regional stuff. Super impressed by Vision Strikers. And I know everyone said that G2 didn't do that well in the EMEA playoffs, but having watched all of their games on this roster, every single second of it, I 100% thought they were going to do good. And I think I even said they were going to come out of their group as the top seed. So I will take that to my grave as a prediction. But Gambit was the one that I was really sure about. I think the other ones I was kind of like, maybe some of them could let me down. Acend too. I was really confident that they were going to at least get to the semis, but obviously, you know, that game just broke my heart. I don't even want to talk about it. That was
should
heartbreaking.
have done, really. Let's put it that way.
No, they shouldn't have. They lost. They got beat by a stronger, more disciplined team, Ryan.
That
They
hurt.
lost
I'd say
That hurt.
that's true. I think it's
Experienced
just
it.
when you're on match
Experienced it.
point for 8 rounds in a row or something like that.
I also think, I think Steel and all 100 Thieves have been quite open about it. They realized that only one player on Ascend was really the difference in that Breeze map, and they're like, okay, we're just not going to go where cNed is, and they would find cNed every round, and they would hit where Bone Cold and where Starkso was, and that's how they got back into it. And yeah, well, I mean, I think Ascend had such a weird tournament just because of the group of death. They got slapped around by Vision Strikers. They beat SuperMassive Blaze twice, which was like an EMEA rivalry, and then like they lost to 100 Thieves in probably the most heartbreaking fashion possible. So I'm happy they're in Champions, though. I'm happy they're in Champions because I think Bone Cold and the rest of the team is going to be. I think they know what the inexperience in shot calling, just the kind of the structure of the team. I think they'll be much better come Champions. So I think the bones are there for an S tier team, and especially when you have a player like cNed, who's a top 5 player in the world, and I think that's confirmed after his LAN debut. They'll definitely be a I don't want to say a dark horse. I would say more of a dark. I think they're an actual contender going into Champions if they fix their issues they had in Berlin.
I think more so the Gambit, to be honest. I feel like from watching Ascend, obviously you look at Bone Cold's performance in that 100 Thieves game and you go, it's not good enough. Like if it was in the EMEA playoffs that it happened, you know, like a bonker kind of performance. I hate to sort of do that to him, but it's kind of like you point out and you go, yeah, fair enough. You're an IGL, you underperform, but this is an underperformance of what is expected. I think that Bone Cold, knowing him as a player, is going to bounce back quicker and better than anybody else. I think Redgar has improved tremendously, hence why Gambit were able to do so well on an international stage, both with his calling and just how he performed individually, because Redgar had a few good rounds. I think Bone Cold is going to be the same. Now he just needs to really don the IGL helmet a bit more. He got absolutely ran over, I think, by 100 Thieves, but that's a great team to be ran over by. Actual experienced players with IGLs like Steel and Nitro making calls. That's tough to go against for your first ever international event. Never mind an international event that you're in against the most experienced team in the world in Valorant, I think, for these things. And also, it's your first proper event IGL in. Like, I
let's
think
not forget
Ascend
that.
are going to come back.
Yeah,
they're going to come back super strong.
Let's not forget Bone Cold's only been IGLing because since the addition of Zeke, like he's never IGL'd before. So I think we can definitely cut him some slack. And as someone who has a particular sympathetic view towards IGLs who might get a lot of shit from other people, I've experienced it firsthand, and it's definitely nothing to do with him as a player who's not good enough. It's purely just experience. Like you cannot, like Nitro said this in an interview afterwards, that he lost a whole bunch of times before he won anything. You just got to go through it, and I'm really glad. Same as Sentinels, I think they need to go through the losing phase before they come back from it. But speaking of that, let's look at our post-event tier list, which I still think Tyler's trolling a little bit, but
no, I'm not trolling. I can explain mine very well. So obviously, I mean, some people will be like, "Oh, Sentinels, they suck, they lost." No, it was one bad tournament. They were underprepared. I think all of them, Dapper specifically, I think their anchors were not up to snuff at the tournament. Dapper and Zoms have both acknowledged that. TenZ needs to improve his raise. I think he is still one of the top 4 players in the world. I will defend that to my grave. He still had an amazing tournament. His raise, though, needs to be upgraded, especially if Split becoming now a main map. With Fracture being added and Breeze into the pool, Split has become one of the more played maps in the entire pool, which was the opposite in Reykjavik when Split was kind of the perm ban map, but now it's kind of need to be played. And if you're going to play Raze, TenZ needs to upgrade that. But I still believe in Sentinels. I still think they are on the same tier as Gambit. I think Sentinels needed that loss, and I think they will come back a much better team. So yeah, those two teams in the S tier, they've both won tournaments. They've both shown what it takes to get to the end. That's why they're S tier. A tier, I would say these are the contenders who have shown me that I think, as Ryan kind of stated, like the gap isn't really that grand between the elite teams. I think there's a big gap between A and C tier. I think that's where the big gap is. I think those 8 teams I put at S and B all have the potential to be, world champions, given the preparation, given the stylistic matchup, given everything that goes into it. I think Envy were the third best team. They were the second best team of the tournament. I think they're only going to get stronger. They're a new team. Ye and Marv are just still getting established into the mold, and we saw them kind of evolve as the tournament went along. I'm going to be very if they fix their eco rounds, if they can actually win some anti-eco rounds like they did against Gambit, where Gambit won, I believe, 4 eco rounds, which just totally changed the momentum of that entire series. They should be good. I think the Gambit series was actually quite closer than people remembered, similar to Fnatic versus Sentinels. But yeah, Gambit were the better team, so I can't put them in S. They're in A. Vision Strikers, A. They've proven how good they are, front to back. 100 Thieves, they need to fix some things. I think they were very spontaneous with their changes, like, let's throw Nitro on Jet. Maybe if the Jet nerfs, it's not going to take her out of the game, but I think the KO buffs might make him more viable, which adds more strength to steel. I give 100 Thieves a lot of credit for how they've they weathered the storm of a tournament where I don't think their compositions were at the peak of what they could be. So I think they're A. G2, as we saw, they evolved throughout the tournament. If they can make it through LCQ, I think they're also going to be a contender. And then Acend, I've brought up before. B, I think SuperMassive Blaze are the gatekeepers. I call it the Blaze line. I think we saw how I think they need a lot of work on their utility. I think Acend kind of exposed them about how you can just play and force them off of these angles. And if they can't get their dry peaks and aim diffs, they can be, capitalized upon. Even Paper Rex did that. I think Supermassive Blaze are one of the weaker teams when it comes to utility, but maybe one of, if not the best, just aim duel team. And I think those aim duels and this dry play can beat anyone below them. I think they can beat Crew. I think they can beat F4Q. I think they can beat ViewKey just through their pure mechanics, their raw skill. I think the teams above them are teams that can punish their lack of utility. I think like 100 Thieves, who might not have the firepower for Massive Blaze, would definitely abuse their lack of utility and know how to push, Izzy off an angle, how to push Turco off an angle. So I think that's the B line for me, the Blaze line. And then I think everyone below there is just kind of self-explanatory. Havon Liberty is my last place team. They were very bad.
I feel like with Supermassive Blaze, a lot of it came down to the fact that everybody wants to be a hero on that team. Like, you can tell everybody wants to top frag. Everybody wants to do aggressive peaks where they are the hero. They're the man of the hour. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes Brave is top fragging. Sometimes Rust is up there. But I don't think they are satisfied as a team unless every single person feel like they're individually on top. And that creates friction. And that creates, an environment sometimes that doesn't enable the team to win. It enables the players to look good and it makes them star players, which is, I think, the expected side effect of forming a super team. Like, why have you brought in Russ and put him on an agent that he cannot carry on? I think that's going to be the issue going into LCQ. I hope they fix some of that, and in terms of like giving people more defined things to do. But what can you do when you have 5 Turkish players who are all like insanely good at shooting, but you're telling some of them like, oh no, you're a support now. Like, Izzy is the star player. He is, but at the same time, is he, get it? But is he really the star player? Sorry, Ryan, I had to. But yeah, I'll let you roast Tyler for this. What do you think of this?
I feel like the whole Supermassive Blaze conversation is a really interesting one. Yeah. Because if I was to put them on a tier list, I wouldn't put them on any rank. I'd take them off because I think it's just inconclusive. Because they've lost twice, and it was both to Acend. The first one was the first game where the white noise issues were probably at their prime. So it wouldn't surprise me if Supermassive Blaze are on stage and it's like, we're over peaking because we can't hear anything. All we're hearing is like, We can't even hear any utility or anything being used. They won against Paper Rex. It's kind of expected. And then the second game that they played, Acend, was a bit more of a toilet bowl. Both teams played awfully because the stakes, I suppose, on the game was super tricky to keep manage of. Again, I think Bone Cold was really struggling with the IGLing for that reason alone. And we mentioned it before for EMEA. Poor IGLing, where he's lurking off on his own. How is anybody expected to make a call on what a team should be doing when he doesn't know what the team is doing other than what's on the minimap? He's completely alienated from the rest of the team. I just think that the SuperMassive Blaze team, people are going to go into Last Chance Qualifiers and go, SMB doesn't stand a chance. I still think they can qualify. I think it's just that they kind of ended up on the wrong side of stuff at a LAN, which is also another thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And I feel like the SuperMassive Blaze team can play a lot better. I'll be honest, they looked pretty awful at this event. I thought the way that they played around utility and their ideas was incredibly lacking. I think Tanny's going to be a big help for that, but obviously there's language barriers there that they have to get through, to the point that Tanny's looking for other options potentially. It's always going to be difficult because Turkey is a region. It's not really something that they're known to be strong on. But I don't think you could sort of say, oh, because SuperMassive Blaze lost out in groups against a group that was kind of surprisingly the group of death. Vision Strikers looked insane. I just think that the expectations of SuperMassive Blaze's loss should be taken off of them a little bit and kind of go, all right, we need to see this again, because SMB didn't play well, but they also found themselves in really tricky positions overall.
Yeah.
Okay,
it was fun watching them just run into Zeke's Odin like 12 times on Ascent. Like, it was really like, oh, let's take a gun duel, and Zeke would just be behind in just Boathouse, just firing. And it was just like, okay, they're not going to use utility to drive him out. They're just going to just kind of 1v1 him with an Odin. And he would just... they have so much just pure talent, and just like, they're going to get there. Like, it might not be for LCQ, it might be for champions if they can't qualify. I think, though, that they have the players to they're smart enough, they're talented enough to make it happen. It's just, they can't survive off of those crazy, like, Turco had so many, like, 1v3 clutches that were just like, okay, aim diff. And it's just, I kind of agree with Ryan, where it's like, it's even hard to rank them just because they played Ascend twice. I think the one thing that does really is that red mark on them is that they did lose to Paper Rex, and we're very close to going out 0-2 or 1-2 to Paper Rex and being eliminated without winning a single map. So hopefully they can get it figured out for LCQ, because G2 looked extremely good.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff they need to fix. I think like I say, it plays into the fact that they all want to be star players, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see. But Ryan, most importantly, this tier list, what do you think? Because we do need to move on to mine after this one.
I think that putting Vivo Keyed and Paper X with FRQ in the crew is a bit of a step too much. I think crew and FRQ have kind of shown that they're at least somewhat consistent. I do expect to see, well, we're going to see crew at champions anyway, but FRQ could be a dark horse for the APAC Last Chance Qualifiers. They have what it takes. I think they just need to better position themselves to be successful, like having a coach that knows how to utilize these players, because they have innate talent. It's just about putting it in the right spots. I think that's the only other thing, is just you have to take SuperMassive Blaze off the rankings. It's just so hard to gauge.
No, I'm going to force you to rank them, Brian. Don't worry. I'm going to, no matter what, I'm forcing you. In a second.
Okay.
Well, look at mine first, and then I'm going to force you to do yours. So this is what I have gone for on this tier list. I've done a post-event one, like more kind of exclusive, based on what we saw. Gambit, I truly believe, is the only S-tier team there, from their performance, their improvement, the way that they've managed to maneuver around the meta, individual performances. Every single person on this team, I believe, is in their own right that deserve to be there. I don't think anyone can be traded out at this point. I feel like there is zero weak links on this team, and it's that argument of like, oh, but what if you like bring in TenZ? I don't think they need to bring in someone like TenZ in order to succeed, clearly. And that's why I put them on S, because I do believe all of the other teams not necessarily have weaknesses in terms of players, but they have areas which I feel like needs to be improved on. Not some major, some lesser major. I think is pretty freaking self-explanatory. I haven't done this in order, so these are just all the teams I feel like is A tier.
I was gonna say like Sentinels.
No. This is not in order. I think much like Tyler said, I feel like S and A, these teams, any of these could win champions. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't be shocked. I was extremely generous about Crew and Paper X. Actually, Paper X are probably, I'd say, the biggest surprise for me, my favorite team. And honestly, the only team I feel like if you took the name tags off of these players and you showed this team to me, I was like, which region do you think this team is from? I would never say SEA. I'd say Europe. Like they play like an EMEA team. They are good enough to be an EMEA team. And the only reason that they didn't get out of groups, I believe, is because they were in the group of death. If they were in Envy's group, I feel like they could have gotten out. They would have had a huge chance of getting out. If they were in Gambit 100 Thieves group, again, I think they would have had a decent chance. Maybe they wouldn't have gotten out over those players, those teams. And had they been in the position at F4Q and they had to play Sentinels and G2 twice, I wouldn't even be surprised if they took a map off of Sentinels at this point. They were so impressive. I think the score line tells a different story, because like when you look at a team that goes 0-2, it's like, oh, they're dog shit. They really were not dog shit. And from speaking to all of the other players, European players that scrimmed against them, most of them said that this team was super, super good. As in, they were incredibly surprised at how good they were. And I feel like they are being held back by their region. They're being held back by the fact that they can't find good practice partners. They don't have the resources, the money, the prestige. And if these 5 players representing this title were in EMEA, they will be a top 10 team. I know that's like a big statement at this point, but I truly believe after like everything I saw from them, the professionalism, the personality, like I would die to have someone like Benkai in EMEA. I think that's hilarious. Like imagine interviewing this guy week in, week out. It'd be amazing. So for me, I could not put them in C or D. I was so impressed with them, and I was very, very upset they didn't make it out of groups, because I do think they would have brought more surprises. They could have challenged more people, and they had a good read on the meta as well. And they took more rounds off of Vision Strikers than Acend did, which is just mind-blowing at this point. But yeah, Ryan, I'll let you see what you think of my list, because I know I'm very generous here.
So I like the bottom of your tier list a lot more than Fionn's, but I like the top of Fionn's more than yours. I think that like Sentinels out of S tier, I think is a bit too hyperbolic.
Yeah.
When it comes to if this was a double elimination tournament, would we have seen them drop out in the same way that FPX have dropped out in tournaments? Probably not. More than likely, they would have gone through the losers bracket, gone to the grand final anyway. So I think that they were a bit unlucky to lose out to a unsuspecting Envy team, because I don't think anybody realistically thought Envy was going to make the quarterfinals when you look at that bracket, right? So I think Sentinels are still up there alongside Gambit. That's a really interesting matchup that I hope we get to see at Champions, because obviously these teams, Gambit and Sentinels, would just be an incredible showing. 2 very different styles and ideas and ways of playing. I think that like A and B tier for the most part is looking good. Other than that, Sue, I think I'd move Paper X down to C. I do agree with everything that you've said. I think that they had really good ideas when it comes to like how Europeans play as well. Like speaking to some of the coaches, they were like the same as you. Like they play like a European team. They have the right idea, but they're not great at executing on it. Which for a young, if it was a young team, you'd go, all right, that's fair enough. They'll grow into it. But this is a team that used to play Counter-Strike that just moved over, got carbon copied onto Paper X's Valorant team. Like this is a team that should know a little bit better. But, like should they game,
though? But... Like look at their region and looking what they have to work with. You know, for me, it's like I think almost at the beginning of every round, they would play rounds like perfectly. It's just like the mid-round adjustments and reads that just fall flat. It actually reminds me of early days of Summon FC, like genuinely, where they had such amazing setups and like great early round stuff, and then mid-round and late round, they just make big mistakes or they don't know how to react to things. But for me, also
Gambit months ago.
Yeah, like all that
early Gambit.
I also want to say that these guys, even though they're from the Southeast Asia region and they have players representing them from different countries. Obviously, Ben Kai's from Singapore, but they all come in English. They come in English. This is a team with 5 players that don't come in their native language, and they are this good. I don't know. I don't remember the last time that a team from a smaller region. I mean, I guess X10 was good because Patapan was good, right? But I feel like these guys are good because they're all just good, not just one player. But I really want to see them champions. I'm rooting really hard.
They have to beat new
Oh, yeah.
in F4Q.
That's gonna be tough.
I think the only argument against the whole like, oh, it's the region that's letting them down. PaperX still lost to Brent Esports in the finals.
Yeah, true.
Team Secret, baby.
So it's not like they're just dumping on the region like Crew Esports is, right? Where they're just constantly at the top. Like, it is somewhat competitive, and also it's a region that can scrim against Korean teams and Japanese teams. Like SEA do play. There is a bit of a mix. There was, at least in late 2020, there was a lot of tournaments that included Absolute Jupiter, now Zeta Division at the time, obviously Vision Strikers, AHQ and a tackle round, which were some early good SEA teams that just disbanded before VCT started, weirdly enough. I think that it would be like, for me, if I was to do a tier list, it'd be...
Oh, let's do yours. Let's do yours. All right, let's do it. Do you want to start from the bottom or top?
Sentinels as the best team. I don't think, like, we've seen Gambit lose more than Sentinels did in stage 3. And yet, like, granted, luckily, Gambit could lose and still make it through because it was like the GSL groups. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have seen them and we'd be rating them a lot lower. I think it's the same for Sentinels. I think you have to see both of them play up against each other to see who's the best one. But again, that's an exciting storyline going into Champions, is these two teams are really good, sort of looking really strong in their regions. How are they going to match up? 100 Thieves, Envy, Acend, Vision Strikers, and to a lesser extent G2. I think you could put them all in a, much like you said, they can all have a nice turn and actually win Champions. I don't think it's out of any stretch of imagination. I think SuperMassive Blaze and Crew would going to be. I think they're, all things considered, looking really solid, but at the same time, certainly not to the level of everybody else. And I think that's SuperMassive Blaze underperforming, judging off the tournament, and also Crew overperforming again on an international event. PaperX, I'd like to see them at Champions. I do believe in them, but not from what I've seen. You could argue that FRQ could be B tier as well. Like, they looked decent. They looked strong in a really awkward group. If Brent Esports was there, they probably would have won that matchup. And I think there's a chance that they could beat G2.
One thing with the white noise thing you guys mentioned, when I spoke to G2 and Sentinels, they both said that they never heard Bunny's satchels. Like, a lot of those games, they just didn't hear it. They were just like, oh, well, he's here, I'm dead, great. So I wonder if that would play into it, if they were in an environment where that wasn't kind of a problem.
It would make sense why G2 looked a lot better at dealing. Same with Sentinels. They looked better at dealing with Bunny in the second matches that they had against FRQ as opposed to the first. So I think you can see that in action. But yeah, like, it's the bottom of it's straightforward. I think FRQ, Viva Key, they're better. PaperX are certainly better than Zeta Division, Crazy Raccoon, and Havan, who didn't look good. I think the Japan region is going to boom eventually, but this is just a whole region that's behind on esports. It's going to take time, but they still deserve a seat at the table, I think.
Is that your final list?
I think so. If that could be made and understood, for sure.
Yeah, I got you. Wow. Let's move on to our second segment and talk about Masters a little bit more. We got a few more questions for you, Ryan. I'm going to start with the easy one. Who was your Masters Berlin MVP?
Who could it be? Who could it be? It could be anyone. It could be.
I think
Forsaken.
It's Nats, right? I think it's got to be Nats. I was thinking, like, we were expecting Nats to pop off. I remember in like the first pre-show that you guys did on the desk Yinsu, it was pretty much at that point talking about TenZ and talking about Nats. They were the two players to highlight going into it. So it's nice to see Nats really come in and perform as well as he did. I still think that the player that I was most impressed with and was like, okay, this guy's going to be a star, is still Ethan from 100 Thieves. I think that it's still bizarre to me that they lost to Envy in the semi-final. It's a game that I was haphazardly trying to watch because of stuff going on. but it's a game that I really want to rewatch and get into nitty-gritty detail. It just felt that 100 Thieves ran out of fuel because they had to beat Gambit, they had to beat Acend. By that point, Envy, because they had cruised their way up until the Sentinels game, of course, through the tournament, they still had enough gas in the tank. And I think 100 Thieves just didn't have that kind of superb turnaround performance in them for a third time, right?
It was jet def. They were too scared. I mean, EA was on a heater, and they literally couldn't go mid on Ascent because they were scared of the 1v1 versus EA. So it really was 100 Thieves versus Envy. It really was just 100 Thieves being kind of exploited for their lack of a cNed, TenZ, Yay tier jet. And I think Asuna is a very good jet, but they just couldn't stand up to Yay and his pressure. So that's kind of how that semifinal went.
I'm glad that Asuna kind of got dumped on a little bit because I know he's the kind of player that's going to actually learn a lot from that. It's sobering because I think from speaking to people in 100 Thieves and just people generally, I think Asuna's getting a reputation to be on par with TenZ. I don't think he's anywhere near, but he could be so much better. He could be the simple of Valorant, but if he thinks that he's hot shit now, he's never going to get to that level. So I think him actually being dumpstered by another jet is going to piss him off. I think it's going to rile him up. And I think I can imagine him coming into Last Chance Qualifiers and destroying everybody. But it's a long process for him. He's still super young. He is looking to be going on to being the best player in the world, but he has to have these losses and he has to learn from them. If he goes into events thinking, I'm the best player in the world, and he has an event and loses to Ye and still goes, no, I'm better. It's just, I was not having a great game. Anime was not on my side this time. And I don't think he's ever going to reach the potential, which would be a crying shame for him. But I still think that Ethan is worth his weight in gold now for 100 Thieves. And it's still massively surprising to me that they didn't check in for champions.
Yeah, I mean, Nats for me, easy, move on.
Yeah, it's I would say Nats Masters MVP, and I would say Chronicle was the finals MVP.
Yeah, he was incredible. Bless Chronicle. But yeah,
it's nice to have a Chronicle moment because there hasn't been that many of them. Everybody else seems to have popped off, but Chronicle, in a moment that mattered, it was nice to see.
Yeah, he took over when they needed them the most. Like that bind map should have gone Envy's way, and Chronicle came up so big. So yeah, that's the overall MVP. He is a freak of nature.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Award number 2, Ryan. Who gets the underperformer of the tournament award? Who, in your mind, underperformed your expectations the most on LAN?
That's a good question. I have to go for everything.
I'll start.
Yeah, you go for yours, and I'll see what I agree with.
So my underperformer of the tournament award on LAN, I would like to give this to the entirety of Havon Liberty.
You're gonna get murdered after this, Tyler. R.I.P.
I think Vivo Key were stellar. I think Mariz and Heat were one of the best dual studios in the entire tournament. And here's the thing. If I thought Havon Liberty were a bad team, I would not give them this award. If Crazy Raccoon went 0-4, I wouldn't have given them the award because they lived up to expectations. Havon Liberty should have played much better than they showed. They are a much better team than they showed at Berlin. They are a team that we brought this up before, is that they're a team that is so reliant on the coordination, on 5 playing as 1. Myson might be their star player, but overall they are a team that switches around a lot. They have 3 players who play breach. They're very heavy on their executes and just the kind of their overall hitting fast strategies and having a game plan for every situation. And that just didn't work in Berlin. They looked very lost. They looked like they didn't have any coordination. And for a team that doesn't have a TenZ, who doesn't have a Yay, right, where Envy could have played like Havon Liberty, and they did at times in that final versus on Haven in particular versus Gambit. They looked like they were uncoordinated. They had no clue how to stop Gambit just running gun brimstone style. But they still had Yay, who could just come up in those big clutches and just win rounds off of a 4K on a Marshall. Like a lot of these teams, even a Paper Rex, Sue, who have Forsaken, who can have these pop-off rounds, they can save them from looking foolish. Where Havon Liberty, when you put all your chips on this coordinated style where there really isn't a star player, and that's kind of the true strength of your team, when you're not coordinated and you're not playing at your peak level, you don't have a hero to save the day. You don't have a Turco or a Supermassive Blaze kind of a situation where they look uncoordinated, maybe it's equal to Havon Liberty, but they have the players who can just steal rounds. Havon Liberty didn't have that. So I think underperformance would be Havon Liberty and just kind of Brazil as a whole, because it's such a strong region and such a prideful region. I mean, 6 months ago when we were talking about Reykjavik, Vikings were, people got mad at us and you know, Plat Chat and analysts who were like, yeah, I think EMEA and NA are better than Brazil. Vikings might be, you know, the 5th best team at Reykjavik. And people were mad at that. They're like, why? Don't give respect to Vikings. Give respect to the bald man. Give respect to a region that we believe we're as good or even better than NA and EMEA. And now we're 2 Masters tournaments in, and they have a winning percentage similar to Japan. That is just, that's not where Brazil wants to be. Brazil, the best South American region, the best South American team right now is Crew, and no one can dispute that.
Yeah.
And I think for Brazilian fans, that, and Brazilian orgs, that's not going to be something they can live with going to 2022.
Yeah.
I'd say my underperformer is the Vision Strikers management for not playing Lakia more than they did. I think it was a travesty that we saw Lakia in a 12-1, 12-2 map for 35 minutes. So yeah, Vision Strikers, sort your stuff out. Play Lakia more, please.
It never works, does it? Like 6-player rosters, you're always going to run into those situations. And of course, Lakia was going to be my meme answer for underperformance. Because I said on the show, we were like, who's going to be the MVP? And I said Lakia, because he's going to come into playoffs,
secret weapon
one map, and he just got dumped on, and he never played again. You know, a great little holiday for him. I do agree, sort of like Brazil as a region not living up to expectations. But I think for me, it's from 2 Sentinel players. I think Dapper, considering we were expecting the Dapper versus Nats matchup to be colossal, right? I think Nats had that kind of consistent performance, but Dapper didn't. I think in his games, he looked a bit overran, which is kind of what you said before, Fionn. I think Zoms needs to be careful. I think that he is an underappreciated Omen. I think that people don't really give him credit where it's due, but his Astra is slow in comparison to a lot of other teams when it comes to utility. It just seems to always catch him off guard, which seems a massive surprise. I think, though, for my most disappointing performance, and I think this has been, it's an understandable one, but it's Pora for SuperMassive Blaze, because I think when we're looking at Sentinel players in EMEA as a region, Pora is one of those players alongside Nats, or at least he used to be. That's kind of my point of just, he was cerebral. He'd find flanks, he'd do amazing. But I think him being the IGL doesn't suit this team at all. And I think it's a massive waste to have such a key player that finds timings in the same way that Dapper and Nats can do, having to call. Like he's saying on split, you're attacking on split, he's in A lobby, as most ciphers will do, and he's calling what his team should be doing in mid and B, whilst he's not there. Like, he has enough to deal with. Like, it's so difficult to be making those calls and doing that kind of stuff without being with the team whilst they're making those moves. I feel like they need to put somebody maybe like Turco on calling. I don't know. I mean, it's all down to man management for me. But I think Pora's own personal performance has fallen off a cliff now that he started to IGL. And I think that showed in this event.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think that there were a few players I think we expected to turn up that they didn't. But on a more positive note, Ryan, what was your favorite moment from the tournament? If you could pinpoint down to one moment.
I think the Benkai interview originally was really good. There's a couple of plays. I think the Defo Ace. Yeah. Because the funny thing is that when we're looking at the Jet players in EMEA, Defo was never on that list. He was the last player that you would expect to win. I was on a call with Anders, I think, when this game was going on, and I jokingly said Defo wins these, and he did, and it was amazing because it's so unlike Defo to pop off in a moment like that. He's still an incredible Jet, but he just doesn't play in that playstyle. So it was just a nice change of pace, and it made for a really interesting series overall for Gambit, which I think was one of the reasons why they did so well. Is Defo had moments where he looked great, and none better than a 1 versus 5 ace clutch on an eco with jet knives, which he's never going to be able to do again after the nerf. So there's that as well.
These versus Ascend. That's the moment of the tournament for me. Nothing.
Of
that's
course
when the tournament,
it was.
That's when it ended. The tournament ended on that note. That was the end of the tournament for me. Just the comeback of the century. I was watching the Plat Chat co-stream. Sideshow snuggled in his European flag, watching as ascend through round after round, and then just got bopped by Nitro.
That was also
Nitro,
that was also Sean Guez's favorite moment. I'm pretty sure he had a whale of a time. I'm gonna choose one from 100 Thieves as well, because your girl is an Odin main, an Odin Killjoy main, and nothing pleased me more than watching Steel on LAN, giving it large, doing this like come again, and just spamming at the freaking post run and killing every single person, and then losing because he was reloading.
Yeah,
editor, please put this moment in. We need this moment in this show, just so everyone else at home can relive it.
Video for that is so good as well, because like Steel has got one hand holding down left mouse button and the other is like doing that, and then he has to reload, and then you just see as the defuse comes in him just going
yeah.
The stuff he was saying, man, like he's become one of my favorite players just with some of the
he came from the UK scene. He knows how to give it. He's been to iSeries, he knows. Yeah.
Him versus Link calling is what I was just shouting at each other.
All right, final question in this segment. I'm gonna throw a curveball at you guys. I want you guys spontaneously to give me this ranking. I think right now, if we made a poll, or if we made a survey online with the general Valorant fan, and we asked who the best player in the world is, I think there would be 4 answers. I think 4 players would stick out as the consensus answers of one of these 4 players is the best in the world right now today after Berlin. I think we would have Nats, TenZ, cNed, and Ye. I think those 4 would be the names I see most pop up. I've made a tweet about it. I think most people were in consensus that it was somewhere between those 4. I want to ask you two, if you had to rank those 4 players right now at this second. Oh yeah, you have to rank these players right now. These 4 players from best to worst being still probably 4th or 5th best player in the world. How would you rank them in your point of view? Ryan, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Wait, I'm ready. Right. I could go.
Okay. You go for yours.
I'm ready. Yeah. Nats is number 1. I don't think there's any other player in the world that's like him. He's literally one of a kind, as the world is right now in terms of Sentinel players and how smart he is, and he's super young. You can't teach that stuff. Like, you cannot teach the stuff that Nats does. You either have it or you don't have it. You have to be a super nerd to play like Nats does. So Nats is number 1, and the other 3, I'm happy to just put them as just Nats, everyone else. Yeah,
I got mine.
That's my ranking.
Top 5. I've got like a late contender to come in and take the number 1. So Ye, I think Ye is great, but I think it's way too early to be saying that he's world-class material. I think he's had one good event, one good stage. Could be just a honeymoon period. He might drop off a cliff. cNed, as much as I love him, and he's improved a huge amount since the BBL days of last year, he still has a long way to go and to grow. And I think we're starting to see that now. Just with him being on camera is enough of a step in the right direction. Nats is the best in his role, but I still think I put TenZ above him. But I would put Shazam over all 4 of them. I think that I said this about Reykjavik as well. I just think that there is no other player like him that could do what he does. He is going to be a legacy, not only as an IGL, but also when he eventually retires, I could see him coaching and then being the best coach in the world. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where I think Shazam has everything that is needed to be a star player. And I don't think anybody comes close in those kind of areas, which are often underappreciated enough. So I think that all those 4 players are great, but I think Shazam is still up there.
I back that. I could back that.
I think Shazam, I think a lot of people I don't want to say lost faith in Shazam. Just because Sentinels came in so looking undercooked, I think that you have to when Sentinels does amazingly well, I think you have to give credit to Shazam, right? And I think that ups his ranking regardless of how he performs. I also think when they come underprepared, that also has to be put to Shazam in some level, right? Where they were not ready for some of the things they saw, and they didn't evolve their compositions like you would have hoped. So I still think Shazam's top 5. I'm fine with those 5 players. I'm a Ye. I think Ye is incredible. I think I think ever since Ambox let him play Jet and be a duelist outside of just playing Breach and being, the sidekick to Android, he's been absolutely fantastic. But if I had to rank, I'll throw Shazam in there. I'll say top 5. Number 1, I'd put Nats. I would actually go on Yinsu's side for once and say, I think what she says about you can't teach his intelligence. I think he is a brilliant mind for the game, and I think I think TenZ isn't dumb in any sort of way. He's also a very intelligent player, but I think Nats is just kind of instinct and just understanding of the map and timing and all that. It's something you can't teach, and his rifling is just next level.
Let's put it this way: if he was a Jet main, he will be just as good as the other Jets we mentioned. Yeah.
I think maybe. Yeah, I think he might not hit the same peaks as a Ye or a TenZ or a cNed, but I still think he'll be up there.
He'll be up there.
He'd be up there, but I think he is. I would put him as number 1 right now. Number 2 is TenZ. He has to work on his raise. I think that even on a down tournament for him, he was still top 5 in almost every statistic. He dragged Sentinels back on that Haven map versus Envy when they had no reason to be in that game. He slapped around F4Q. Like, mechanically, he's still the best player in the world. But I do think, like, again, I think Nats in his current role is just, he's so different from everyone else that he is that X factor that I think that puts him above TenZ. So I'd put TenZ 2. 3, I'd probably put cNed. I think cNed was let down a bit by his team. I think he had an incredible match versus Under Thieves. And then 4, I'll put Shazam 4 and Ye 5 because I think Ryan was correct. Like, we need to see a bit more of him, where I think all the other 4 players have shown more longevity than Ye. I think Ye, let's say he goes to Champions, he has a similar tournament as he had now. I think he's top 4, no question. But I think, as Ryan said, give him one more tournament to kind of show off and then kind of prove that it's not just a one-hit wonder, a one-stage wonder. And I think he's solidified in that top 5 just because, from watching him play, the man is a maniac. And he's only going to get better with time with Envy, right? Where they know how to play him random more. And I respect FNS a lot. And I think by the time Champions comes around, they'll be much more of a well-oiled machine than what we saw at Berlin, which got them 2nd place. But I would say those top 5.
I just want to add that I will put Nats and then TenZ and then everybody else. Like, I cannot disrespect TenZ like that. I also want to give a shout out to Hiko. I thought Hiko had a really, really good tournament. And man, bloody hell, like, Hiko's shock darts, it's annoying. It's he's a rat to play against when he has those shock darts. And
they would have destroyed SuperMassive Blaze. I'm happy that Brave didn't get his wish of playing Hiko, because if I think of hard counters, I don't think of a harder counter for SuperMassive Blaze than SuperMassive Blaze trying to play into the utility of 100 Thieves, where they wouldn't even fight. They'd be like, we're not going to gun duel you guys. We're just going to literally geometry you, and we're just going to annoy you. Yeah,
it was disgusting. But that is the end of that segment. We're going to finish this off with a quick look-sees to LCQ, Ryan. We're going to go through all the 4 regions that are in LCQ and have you predict who is winning that region and why. Let's start with... we'll start with EMEA, and I'll let Tyler ask you about North America. But EMEA, in my opinion, the most difficult one to predict, especially from the stuff that I've been hearing behind the scenes. Again, the filming of this video, Forza are still in Last Chance Qualifiers, and it's not FPX. So let's just work off the basis of that, Ryan.
Yeah, God, I can't even imagine. It would just be so funny to me if FPX make it, like, with players like artists on their roster. It's like, what's going on? Like, it almost feels like kind of like John Cena Undertaker moments from I don't know what it's called, like where you have the wrestling and it, like there's like 5 to 6 different wrestlers and more keep coming out. It's just then suddenly Arden shows up and he's calling it all out. Like, it just would be super weird. For me, it feels like such a difficult event to call for obvious reasons. I think that you have some teams going in with some immense momentum like G2. I think that they're looking to be strong contenders. I'm actually going to say a team that we regularly ignore when it comes to their chances in other events. I think Team Liquid. I thought you were going to say Guild. Like, Team Liquid almost beat Gambit. To not even let them go to Berlin.
Should have beat Gambit. They should have beaten Gambit.
The roster changes that I've heard, and in terms of like how they are dealing with it, I'm a little bit afraid if this is the best time to make those changes. You would have thought like the best time would have been 4 weeks ago when they didn't qualify. That's when you make roster changes. But it does feel like they are trying new things, as they always are. That's my only concern. I feel like if that can like gel well and they do kind of going to this tournament, whoever they're going to pick up with enough time to prepare, yes. But I just think G2 are too scary right now.
Yeah, and I think everybody's glued into what they should be doing. That's a good point. I think that that's the annoying thing about Team Liquid is they come into a tournament with some new zany ideas like Scream on the KO, try it out for a bit. It doesn't work. Then they go back to what they were doing before, which looks great and on par with everybody else, if not a little bit behind, because they weren't playing this stuff when they should have been, whilst everybody else was playing Sky, playing Astra, playing whatever. And I think from an ideas perspective, Team Liquid is really far behind in some of the... I've been rewatching the Gambit game at the moment, and it's just some of the ways that they play rounds are really suspect. But I always think that Team Liquid do better than expected. And who knows, maybe they go on a bit of a honeymoon period with their roster changes. Like, again, that's something that could potentially happen. I think it's between those two teams. That would be a hell of a final to watch. I'm curious to see how Fubalist is going to do, considering the only...
It's been so long.
Yeah, it's been so long. It was Masters 1 that they won in Turkey. You could argue that they shouldn't even be there, I think, just based off the fact that the first Masters events were regional for Turkey, so they get a buffer of points. Certainly when you have some teams that are more in form at the moment, like certainly Giants, but it's hard to gauge. The Strike Arabia team is going to be really interesting as well, because Anubis, I think, have been knocked to the lower bracket, and I don't even think they're the best team in that region. I think it's G2 Team Liquid. I'd like to see Guild do well, but I've been disappointed way too many times to jump in bed with them, to say the least.
I actually say Guild G2, but yes, Tyler?
I'm gonna say I think it's I will guarantee G2 makes it through if Kellogg's plays similarly to how he played at LAN. If he can take what he played and showed in Berlin and he can take it back to the online world, G2 will be a champions, no questions asked. No one can stop them.
So much fun to watch.
But if he reverts back to how he played in the EMEA playoffs in the online Kellogg's, then I think a Team Liquid, a Guild could definitely upend them. But I think Kellogg's, if he can play at that elite, like TenZ level of being a top 5 duelist in a tournament with the best players in the world, I think G2 will cruise through. But again, Kellogg's has only shown it once on LAN. He's not going to be able to dance as much, probably, online. So we'll see how it goes. Let's move over to North America.
One real quick thing about Team Liquid is that the Sky changes. So I wonder how much Soulcast has been nerfed, because he's so important for that team. But yeah, that's just food for thought. Tyler, carry on.
Now let's move to North America, where we'll have the 8 best remaining teams other than Envy and Sentinels, plus 2 Oceania teams with Order and Peace. Really, most North American sounding team names as Australian teams. Order and Peace coming over to play.
Peace and Order finally coming to the States.
Peace and Order of coming to save North America.
I'm going to make this the quickest out of us 3. My head says 100 Thieves, or my head says 100 Thieves, my heart says Exit. There you go.
Ooh.
There you go. There's my 2.
I really like Vanity, and I think Cloud9.
I forgot about Cloud9. I forgot about them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. My head says Cloud9 and 100 Thieves, but my heart still says Exit. Ryan, are you back in Cloud9?
I think so. I would really like to. 100 Thieves were my most fun team to watch. I love the way that they play Valorant. I think it's the right way to play Valorant. And I think that they have what can make an exceptional team. The best in the world when it comes to their tenure and the potential that they have with players like Asuna. But I just think that this Cloud9 team looked scary enough when they didn't have a solid IGL. I think Vanity coming in and making the calls is going to do absolute wonders for this team. And it's going to be the biggest glow up we're going to see in Last Chance Qualifiers. So I'm going to go say them.
I think the obvious answer is 100 Thieves. And I think the second obvious answer, if it's not 100 Thieves, is either going to be Exit or Cloud9 Blue. I'm going to throw in FaZe just because I really want to see FaZe on LAN. I really just want to see Baby Bay and Corey just...
Baby Bay versus Steel shouting at each other, because it's LAN as well, isn't it, right? So
Baby Bay versus Boaster.
And then apparently Plat Chat are going to be sat at the side with their own couch. It's going to be a really weird dynamic of just...
I really do think that I feel like I think 100 Thieves is the best answer for NA. I think that they showed it in Berlin that they can be a championship team. But I think if you want to boom Gambit, I think if you want to really just boom the best EMEA, if you want to boom Vision Strikers, I think FaZe is a team you throw into a champion scenario and they can beat anyone. Like they could beat Gambit. I could see them 2-0 in game. Like they have the mechanical skill and just kind of the ludicrous strategies and just confidence once they get rolling to beat anyone in the world. So I would like to see FaZe land. I don't think it's probably likely of how well 100 Thieves looked, how Acend's been looking with Zekin and Def coming in, and they now have another 2 months of practice in to be ready for this qualifier. Outside of that, I hope Oceania at least wins a match or two. Like, I want to see. I don't think Oceania has any chance. If they do, it's a huge win for Oceania. I think it's a long shot, especially with 100 Thieves not going directly in due to Gambit winning. But I think for Oceania, I think their best. I think they need to come in and at least look respectable. Because if they look at respectable, I think you could argue Oceania getting a direct spot to a Masters next year or having a direct through line to the champions. But I think if they just come in order and peace, get rolled by FaZe and Rise 2-0, 2-0, and they just get knocked out straight away, then I think it's going to be very unlikely that we see Oceania have their own kind of through line to international events. So I hope they at least show something. I want to see something from Oceania.
And speaking of Oceania, we're going to go to their part of the world. Kind of their part of the world, APAC. Obviously, this one's a bit more complicated of them merging a few regions together. Again, my head says new term, but my heart says Paper X. Like
new turn, baby.
I think
Keone's coming.
I think new term makes
coming.
it. They make it, but I want Paper X. Ryan, what do you think?
Could be one of the Chinese teams. We don't even know how they're meant to qualify as well. It's late now.
Ben Kai said to me that the Chinese teams that they prac against are very similar to Turkish teams. So it could either be amazing or it could either be a little bit underwhelming. So we don't know. But, you know, I've seen a little bit of the Chinese teams like before the games come out. They are very aggressive. They play wacky comps. But I just feel like at this point of the game, there's catching up to do. I don't know if they're going to catch up in time. Again, head says new turn. Heart is like, come on, Paper X, do them.
Considering, I'm just going to say this for clout because I know that the sort of South Asian side of global esports has a huge audience, so I'm going to say them so I can farm up all of like the Indian scene followers and stuff like that.
Love it.
Yeah.
Smart.
They're everywhere. Like when it comes to like the fans are just like every time. Like I remember Tanny was with his like looking for team posts. People were like, go to global esports. We'd love to see you there. It was just like people come out of the woodwork and they're just like global esports. So I'm well on that train because I want to farm them for followers.
Hey man, we're interviewing them hopefully before the Asian qualifiers. So we'll tell them about
their number one fan.
Rossi.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime I talk about best player in the world, I always get at least 5 Twitter comments being like, talk about Rossi from Global Esports. He's the real jet god. So I'm excited to see it. Like APAC is such a crazy region because you have Chinese teams that we don't even know about. We have, India coming in with all this fan support. We have, obviously Fionn joining New Turn, making them probably the proverbial favorites. F4Q is going to boom some teams out of the tournament. And I think just pound for pound, they're probably one of the best teams in that last chance qualifier. SEA, we have Paper Rex in there, and along with a slew of other great Southeast Asian teams, it's going to be a battle royal. It's going to really, I think of all the qualifiers, APAC might be the most interesting just beyond the unknown, right? I think NA and EMEA and even South America, I think we have inklings of like, okay, 100 Thieves, G2. I think you look at APAC and you're like, we don't know the strength of China. We don't know the strength of a South Asian Indian team in global esports. Like we're really gonna learn a lot, and we don't know the strength of New Turn of Fionn, who is this. I would say he's the Ye of South Korea, right? Where he just busts onto the scene, stage 3, putting up ludicrous numbers on a subpar amateur team. Now he's joining a club where they have Suggest, they have Allow, they have that shot calling IGL. Mastermind solo and see what they can bring out of him. So APAC's going to be a barn burner. I think New Turn will make it because I really want to see Fionn in solo. I want to see solo have maybe one last dance.
Last hurrah, yeah.
Last hurrah, going to Berlin, champions, have that last kind of send off and see how far they can go in champions. But it's a wide open race. I'm very excited for it. But moving on to our last qualifier, Brazilian fans and South American fans, Chilean, Argentinian, they're all going to be watching the South American qualifier for the four best of the rest in Brazil and the 4 non-crew best in South America, LATAM. will be battling out for that one final spot. Who you got, Ryan?
I spoke to Boa a little bit about this, like, bless her, because like she obviously was hyping up the LATAM region. I think Six Karma, Austral's all looking really good. I think Brazil is ahead of LATAM when it comes to the teams outside of Crew. And I think Furia looks the best out of those four at the moment. Like, it's going to be cool again to see players like MW0 pop off as well. But I think Furia could have easily gone to Berlin in place of Havan in that second spot. So I think that they're going to find form at the right time. But I'm curious to see what Sharks could do. They actually scrimmed a lot in Europe, I think, before their qualifiers. Didn't really amount to much, but clearly they're a team that are striving for that play style and want to learn in that way. So maybe they can impress. But I'm going to say Fury if I had to give an actual team to qualify.
I'm with you, because I heard from some of the other European teams the Sharks were, they were very similar to Iceland, and that concerns me. Like, you want to hear about a team evolving and improving, and I think my head and heart both say Furia for this one.
I'm gonna go with Gamelanders because I want to see MW0.
Of course.
I want to see him on. I want to see him on the main stage. I want to see him. And I think it's something where we talked about before, right? Where we have a lot of these teams where if you're a team that's really unit oriented, if you're like a Havan Liberty, or you're a team that doesn't have that superstar player who can steal you rounds, if you're up against a stronger team, it's going to look embarrassing. But when you have a Heat level player, it can spice things up. When you have a Forsaken, when you have these star players who can make magic happen, that's kind of a calling card for a weaker team to kind of pull through. It's not like 100 Thieves, where 100 Thieves might not have the most overall firepower to a Gambit or a Sentinels or to an Envy, but they have, across the line, the experience and talent to make that kind of style work. For these lower level teams, I want to see a pop-off player, because that's usually how these underdogs actually have a shot, a puncher's chance, so to speak. So give me MW0. He's been hyped up since the beginning of this game. I want to see him on LAN. He has played so many games, so much hype, so much talk about him. And if we could see Saucy, Heat, and MW0, we'd have the big trinity of Brazilian fanaticism, right? Like, those are the three names that you hear always in Brazil. So I would love to see those three test it out and just kind of show, where does Brazil really stand come champion.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, but that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us. EMEA, we reign supreme for the next few months. I can drum. Yeah, we can drum this home. Had to hear about how
CIS.
had to hear about how Sentinels will shit on all of us every single day since May. So.
You say CIS, like, who has a Gambit jacket given to them from, like, the CIS teams? And also, Redgar messaged me saying, hello, comrade. I effectively qualify as somebody from CIS now.
Yeah,
so we can support that.
That's the annoying thing about Gambit. They're the nicest team. They're like the nicest people. They're literally the nicest team to ever be born. Like, I feel like when you think of, like, the Russia team, you think of, like, stoic and cold. And, like, that's the dumb American version that we put in Rocky.
Their CSGO team's quite nice as well.
Yeah, but they're so nice. Like, Nats is like the most lovable guy ever. He just walks around with his panda being like, this is a present for my girlfriend. Like, I love all my fans.
It's actually cuter than that. They both have a panda, and
my god,
and it's named after each other. So his panda is called Adela, and then her panda is got his name, and it's kind of like
his name like Igor? Or is that Redgar's
That's
name?
Redgar's name, yeah. They've also got a Nikita, because Durka keeps telling me that he's not the only Nikita. But we're going off track. Having said that, Redgar is going to be our guest for next week. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, drop it a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll see you back here on Showstopper next week.